The call came at 6:47 in the morning, and I know that because I'd been awake since 4, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain hit the window of my apartment in Portland. My husband's side of the bed had been empty for 11 days. I didn't pick up the first time. I didn't recognize the number. A 503 area code, but not one I had saved. I figured it was spam. I set the phone face down on the nightstand and pulled the blanket up to my chin. Then it rang again. Something in my chest told me to answer, the same something that used to wake me up right before my daughter cried as a baby. A pull. A wrongness in the air. "Is this Joanna?" The voice was a woman's, older, careful. "Yes, this is Dr. Anselm. I'm a physician at Providence Portland Medical Center. I'm calling about your mother. My mother had been sick for 8 months. Ovarian cancer, stage 3. She'd been doing chemo at the cancer center on Burnside, and every Tuesday and Thursday my sister and I took turns driving her. She'd lost her hair in October. By November, she'd lost 12 pounds. By December, she'd stopped asking us to stay for dinner because she said she fell asleep before we even made it to the door. She hadn't told me she'd been admitted. I got to the hospital in 20 minutes. I ran 2 red lights. I didn't even put on a real coat, just the fleece hanging by the door, the one I used to walk the dog. She was in room 4212. She looked small in the bed. She'd always been tall, my mother, 5'8", broad-shouldered, the kind of woman who took up space in a room not because she was loud, but because she was certain about everything. What was right, what was wrong, what mattered, what didn't. She looked small. I sat in the chair beside her and held her hand and didn't say anything for a long time. The monitor beeped. Someone in the hallway laughed, a short, surprised laugh, the kind that doesn't belong in a hospital. "I didn't want to worry you," she said finally. "Mom. You have enough. Mom." She turned her head toward me and her eyes were very clear. That was the thing about my mother, even at the worst of it, her eyes stayed clear. "Where's your husband?" I looked at the window. Outside, the rain had stopped. A patch of white sky sat between 2 clouds. He had a work thing. She didn't say anything. She knew I was lying. She'd always known when I was lying, since I was 7 years old and told her I hadn't eaten the last of the peanut butter cups she'd been saving. She just looked at me the same way she was looking at me now. "He's in Scottsdale," I said. "A conference." "For how long?" "He flew out Monday." "Joanna." "It's fine, Mom. It's a work thing." She closed her eyes. "Sit with me," she said. "Just sit." So I sat. For 3 hours, I sat beside her while she slept, and I watched her breathe, and I tried very hard not to think about the fact that my husband, the man I'd been married to for 6 years, had left 4 days after her diagnosis and told me the conference had been planned for months and there was nothing he could do. His name was Patrick. He was 41, 2 years older than me. He sold commercial real estate, big office buildings, warehouse spaces, the kinds of deals that closed over golf and steak dinners. He was good at it. He made a lot of money. He told me when we first started dating that money was just a tool, that it didn't define him, that what he really wanted was a life that meant something. I believed him. For a long time, I believed him completely. My mother got worse over the next 3 weeks. She moved from the hospital to a care facility in Lake Oswego, a good one, the kind with wide windows and a garden and nurses who actually learned her name. My sister and I split the days between us. My sister took mornings, I took afternoons. I'd sit with her and read to her, or we'd watch the cooking shows she liked, the British ones with the patient hosts and the pretty countryside kitchens. Patrick came home from Scottsdale on a Wednesday. He looked tan. He looked rested. He smelled like sunscreen when he hugged me, that coconut synthetic smell. And I stood in the kitchen holding my car keys because I was about to leave for the care facility, and I thought, he went swimming. While my mother lay in a hospital bed losing the ability to digest solid food, my husband went swimming in a hotel pool in Arizona. "How is she?" he asked. "Not great. I'm sorry, Joe." She's been asking for you." He set his bag down. Something moved across his face. Not guilt, exactly. More like inconvenience. The face a man makes when he's been asked to do something that doesn't fit his schedule. "I'll go this weekend." She might not have until the weekend, Patrick. The doctor said she has months. The doctor said she has months. The doctor said she could have months. They also said Joanna. His voice was patient. The voice he used when he thought I was being emotional. "I just got home. Can we not do this right now?" I drove to the care facility alone. I sat with my mother for 4 hours. She was having a good day. She was awake. She was talking. She told me a story about a road trip she and my father had taken in 1987, before I was born, driving down the coast in a car with no air conditioning, stopping at every roadside stand that sold peaches. "Your father ate so many peaches he was sick for 2 days," she said and laughed. A real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard from her in months. He never admitted it was the peaches. Said it was bad water. Classic Dad. She smiled. Then she looked at me in that way she had. "Tell me what's happening at home." "Nothing's happening." Joanna Marie. I looked at my hands. "Patrick and I are having some difficulties." "What kind of difficulties?" "I don't know exactly." And that was the truth. I didn't know exactly. And that was the truth. What I knew was that something had been off for a year, maybe longer. He worked late more than he used to. He'd become protective of his phone in a way that felt new, turning it face down on the dinner table, taking calls in the backyard. When I asked about it, he said it was a client, sensitive negotiations. He couldn't have noise in the background. I told myself I believed him. I think I stopped believing him sometime around August, when I found a receipt in his jacket pocket for a restaurant I'd never been to. A restaurant 40 minutes from our house on a Tuesday, when he'd told me he was in Salem for a property walkthrough. I put the receipt back. I didn't say anything. I told myself there was an explanation. "He wasn't there," I said to my mother. "When you got sick, he just wasn't there." She was quiet for a moment. "A man who disappears when things get hard," she said, "is showing you who he is." She died on a Thursday morning, 6 weeks after that conversation. I was with her. My sister was there. The nurse in Toft, a soft-spoken woman named Terry, was there. Patrick was not there. Patrick was in Seattle. He said it was a deal that couldn't wait. A commercial portfolio, 8 figures. A seller who'd already had 2 buyers back out and was nervous and needed hand-holding. He said he would drive back Friday morning. She died at 4:12 on a Thursday morning. He didn't come back until Saturday. I want to say I fell apart. I want to say I lay on the floor of our bedroom and sobbed for days. But I didn't. I went through the motions of grief in this very practical, forward-moving way. Called the funeral home, called the funeral home, called the funeral home, called her friends, called the florist. I picked out her dress. I arranged the service. I wrote the obituary myself because I didn't trust anyone else to get her right. Patrick helped in ways that were technically helpful. He made phone calls. He ordered food so I didn't have to cook. He stood beside me at the funeral home with his hand on the small of my back and said the appropriate things to the appropriate people. He cried at the service, real tears, or they looked real. My mother's friends touched his arm and said what a wonderful husband, what a support. I watched him accept their sympathy and I felt something harden in me. Something quiet and deep and permanent. The night of the funeral, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to Patrick breathe. He'd fallen asleep 20 minutes after we got home. The clean, unconscious sleep of a man with an uncomplicated conscience. And I stared at the ceiling and I thought about my mother's voice. A man who disappears when things get hard is showing you who he is. My phone was on the nightstand. I picked it up just to have something to hold. There was a text message from my mother's number. I sat up so fast I knocked the water glass off the nightstand. I read the message 3 times before my eyes could make sense of it. The storage unit, 1847 S.E. Holgate. Combination is your birthday. Go tonight. Don't tell Patrick. I stood in our bedroom in the dark for a long time. Patrick was breathing steadily behind me. I could hear traffic outside, a distant siren, the neighbor's dog, the normal sounds of a normal night. My mother's phone had been turned off and returned to me at the care facility. It was in a plastic bag in the top drawer of my dresser with her watch and her rings. I went to the dresser and opened the drawer. The bag was there. The phone was inside. It was off. I pressed the button and the screen stayed black, battery dead. Someone had sent that message from her number. I dressed in the dark, jeans, a sweater, my old boots. I took my keys from the hook by the door. Patrick didn't stir. The storage facility on Essie Hallgate was one of those mid-century brick buildings that used to be something else. A warehouse maybe, or a light manufacturing space. The kind of building Portland has been slowly converting for 30 years. The roll-up door was unlocked. There was a keypad, and I typed my birthday, and it opened. Unit 22 was at the end of a corridor that smelled like cardboard and old wood. The combination padlock took my birthday and clicked open on the first try. Inside, there was a folding chair, a lamp plugged into an extension cord, and a plastic tub. In the tub, a manila envelope, a thumb drive, and a handwritten note in my mother's handwriting. I sat down in the folding chair and I turned on the lamp and I read the note. Joanna, if you're reading this, then you found a way. I knew you would. You were always the one who found a way. I need you to know that I tried to tell you several times and couldn't. I kept thinking I should wait until you were ready or until things were clearer or until I had more proof. I kept finding reasons to wait and then I ran out of time. And I'm sorry for that. Patrick has been stealing from us. Not from me. From both of us. From you. 8 months ago, right before my diagnosis, I was updating my will with Robert. You know Robert, he did the estate work after your grandfather died. During that process, Robert noticed some irregularities in a joint investment account that Patrick manages. He brought it to me privately because he wasn't sure I knew. I didn't know. The short version, Patrick has been systematically moving money out of accounts that have your name on them. He opened a secondary account in Nevada 18 months ago. You're not on it. He's transferred approximately $340,000 over 14 months. Small amounts at a time, nothing that would trigger an automatic alert. He's been careful. I hired a forensic accountant. Her report is in the envelope. The full documentation is on the thumb drive. I also asked Robert to repair a notarized summary. That's in there too. I didn't tell you while I was sick because I was afraid you'd confront him and he'd find a way to move the money faster. I didn't want to put that on you while you were caring for me. I'm sorry. I should have. I should have found a way. You know what you need to do. You're the one who always knew what to do. I love you. I'm with you. Find a good lawyer. Mom. I sat in that folding chair for a long time. The lamp buzzed faintly. Somewhere outside a car went by with its bass thumping. Somewhere outside a car went by with its bass thumping. $340,000. I thought about every dinner party where Patrick had talked about financial discipline. About every conversation where he'd said we needed to be careful, that real estate was cyclical, that we should be conservative with our savings. I had a retirement account. I contributed to it diligently. I thought we had shared investments. I thought we were building something together. I opened the manila envelope. The forensic accountant's report was 42 pages. She'd highlighted the key transfers in yellow. I didn't understand all of it, but I understood enough. Dates, amounts, account numbers. 14 months of methodical, patient theft. The kind of thing you do when you've decided the person you're stealing from won't notice or won't look. I took photos of every page with my phone. I tipped the thumb drive. I put everything back in the tub, locked the unit, and drove home. Patrick was still asleep. I got back into bed. I lay there until 6:15 when his alarm went off, and I watched him silence it and stretch and look at his phone and swing his legs over the side of the bed with the ease of a man who'd slept 8 uninterrupted hours on the night of his mother-in-law's funeral. And I thought about my mother's handwriting, about her hands, about how, at the end, she'd still managed to hold a pen. I didn't say anything. Not that morning. I called a lawyer named Diane Kowalski, who a friend had used in a divorce 3 years earlier. I got her voicemail and left a message. She called back within the hour. I need to understand what my options are, I said. My husband has been moving money out of joint accounts. I have documentation. There was a brief pause. How much documentation? A forensic accounting report, a notarized summary from an estate attorney, 14 months of transfer records. Can you come in this afternoon? I met with Diane for 2 hours in her office in the Pearl District. She was in her 50s, small and very still, the kind of woman who listens to everything before she says anything. She went through the report page by page. She asked questions I didn't know the answers to and wrote them down without reacting. At the end, she folded her hands on the desk. This is wire fraud, she said. Possibly more, depending on how the Nevada account was established. This isn't just a civil matter. This is potentially criminal. I absorbed that. What do I do? First, you don't touch the joint accounts. Don't move anything. If he's watching for movement, it could accelerate a transfer. Second, I'm going to refer you to a colleague who handles financial crimes specifically. Third, and I want you to hear me on this, you cannot tell him what you know. Not yet. I know. Do you have somewhere you can go if needed? Somewhere he doesn't know about? I thought about my sister's house in Southeast. Yes. Good. And Joanna? She paused. I'm sorry about your mother. This is a lot to carry. I nodded. I didn't trust myself to speak. Over the next 3 weeks, I moved carefully. Diane's colleague, a financial crimes attorney named Marcus Webb, filed the initial documentation with the Oregon Division of Financial Regulation and referred the case to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit in Portland. The forensic accountant agreed to testify. Robert, the estate attorney, provided his notarized summary. I kept making Patrick's coffee. I kept sleeping in our bed. I kept asking about his day and listening to him talk about deals and clients and the market. I kept being Joanna, the wife who showed up, who held things together, who didn't make a fuss. He took another trip to Scottsdale in November. Client relationship, he said. She owns 3 commercial properties down there, thinking of selling. Of course, I said. When do you leave? Thursday morning. I smiled. I'll pack your bag. He left Thursday. On Friday, the FBI executed a search warrant on his Nevada account. On Saturday, they contacted his bank in Portland. On Sunday night, I packed a bag of my own, the things that mattered, documents, hard drives, the box of my mother's jewelry, and I drove to my sister's house. Patrick landed at PDX on Monday morning. I know this because my sister and I were tracking his flight. We sat at our kitchen table with coffee and watched the little plane icon cross the map on her laptop. You okay? She asked. I don't know yet. Mom knew, she said. It wasn't a question. She knew. She protected you until the very last minute, Joe. I looked out the window. My sister's backyard had a Japanese maple that had been there since before she bought the house. It was winter now, bare branches, gray sky. But I could picture it in October. The red so vivid it almost looked like fire. My mother had loved that tree. She used to stand at the window and look at it and say, that's the thing about maples. They burn brightest right before they let go. Patrick's arrest was handled quietly. Federal agents at the airport before he'd even made it to baggage claim. His lawyer issued a statement. His company put him on administrative leave. The deal with the Scottsdale client, it turned out, was not a deal with the client. The woman in Scottsdale had been with him for almost 2 years. I found that out not from the investigation, but from a text she sent to his personal phone, a phone I'd been given access to as part of discovery. A text she sent the same morning my mother's service was held. A photo of the 2 of them on the pool deck of a hotel, his arm around her shoulders, both of them squinting into the sun. He was smiling. His whole face was smiling. The easy, unguarded smile of a man on vacation. My mother was being lowered into the ground at that exact hour. I looked at the photo for a long time. I looked at his smile. I looked at the blue of the pool behind them, the brightness of the Arizona sun. the way he held her with the comfortable ease of someone who had been holding her for a while. Then I put the phone down. The investigation took 8 months. At the end of it, Patrick pled guilty to 2 federal wire fraud charges and 1 count of financial exploitation. His sentencing was handled by a federal judge in Portland on a Tuesday morning in August. I didn't attend. My lawyer was there. I waited at my sister's house. Diane called me at 11:43. 32 months federal, she said, plus restitution, full amount plus interest. I sat with that for a moment. The restitution goes to you directly, she said. We'll work through the civil side separately, but you'll see the first payment within 60 days. Okay, Joanna, this was a very good outcome. I know. Your mother's documentation made this case. Without it, she stopped. She was very thorough. She was, I said. She was always very thorough. I've been back in Portland for 6 months now. I'm in a different apartment. One I found myself, on the east side, with high ceilings and a gas stove and a window in the kitchen that gets good light in the afternoons. I'd started cooking again. Real cooking, the kind that takes time. On weekends, I drive out to the coast. I park at Cannon Beach and walk and let the wind do whatever it wants with my hair, and I don't think about what I should be doing or who I should be answering to. I kept my mother's number in my phone. I know it doesn't reach her, but I keep it because it's there, because it's hers, because some nights I still want to call it and tell her what happened to the maple in my sister's backyard, how it came back in spring, how red it got, how alive. Sometimes I drive out past the storage facility on S.E. Holgate. I don't stop. I just look at the brick building and the roll-up door, and I think about that folding chair and that lamp and the smell of cardboard and old wood. I think about sitting alone at 2 a.m. holding a letter from a woman who was already gone, who had known she was leaving and spent her last clear months making sure I wouldn't be left with nothing. She could have told me. I wish she had told me. I wish she had told me. But I think I understand why she didn't. She knew me, knew how I'd react, knew I'd confront him, and he'd find a way to disappear the money before anything could be done. She protected the outcome the only way she knew how. She stayed practical right until the very end. That was my mother. That was always my mother. The last thing I do every night before I turn off the light is check my phone. Old habit. And sometimes, in that half second before the screen goes dark, I think I see her name. I never stop missing her. But I think she knew that. I think she counted on it. That I would miss her enough to get up at 2 a.m. and drive to a storage unit in the rain and sit in a folding chair and read 42 pages and feel the grief and the rage and the cold clarity all at once and still know exactly what I had to do next. She was right. I always find a way.